Today I'm going to be teaching you guys how to sew the Babydoll Raglan from Peekaboo Pattern Shop. This pattern comes in an adult and a youth size, and it's got a nice relaxed fit to it. So we'll go ahead and get started. I have all of my pattern pieces cut out, and what I like to do very first thing before I even start sewing is to blind hem all of my pieces. So you can see I've ironed in where my hem is going to be. So this is kind of the bottom skirt piece, so it's got a 3/4 inch hem folded over and ironed. And then I also have, I'm going to add these little ruffles to the bottom of my sleeve, and so these ones have a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So this isn't technically the first step of the pattern, but that's just a little something, a personal preference I like to do. Okay, so I have all of my everything that's going to be hemmed, blind hemmed, and then make sure once you've ironed it the shape you need it to be, or over that 3/4 inch, make sure you unfold it. We're going to sew everything together, unfold it, and we'll hem it later. Okay, so the first step is to gather this skirt bottom piece because we're going to attach this to the bodice, and it's obviously much wider than the bodice right now. So I'm going to sew 2 lines of basting stitches here along this top edge. So my sewing machine is set to A, which is just a straight stitch. My length is 4, which is the longest my machine goes to, so I'm just going to do a really long straight stitch. I'm going to do my stitches in my seam allowance, which is a 1/4 inch, so I'll do, sorry, I have a 1/2 inch seam allowance here, so I'll do one a 1/4 inch and then another one just on the other side of that, so I'll end up with 2 rows of straight stitches on this. Okay, so you can see there that I've got my 2 rows of basting stitches, and I'm going to use those. I'm going to do this on the other side, and then I'll use those together. I have my shirt front and my shirt back right here, and here is my skirt bottom that I want to gather so that these are the same width. And what I've found works best for me is I've marked my center point here just with the marker. I don't know if you can see that on my shirt front and shirt back, and I've got my center point marked on my skirt piece right there. So I'm going to pin my centers together, and then I'm going to gather from the outside to the center just to get the width. I'm not going to worry about distributing my gathers yet, just to get my width to match up with my shirt. So I'm going to do that on the front and on the back. Okay, so I have those clipped with the right sides together, so the print I want showing is touching each other, and I can see here's the end of my top and here's the end of my bottom way over here. So I'm going to pull on the bobbin threads of this gather to tighten up my fabric, to kind of create like a ruffly effect until my bigger piece is as wide as my smaller piece from the edge just to the middle. So I'm going to do that by pulling these 2 bobbin threads on the bottom. I'm just going to hold on to them and slide my fabric along those 2 threads. And I don't want to pull too tight because I don't want to snap these threads, but you can already see how I'm gathering up that fabric. And I don't really care about evenly distributing the ruffle yet. I'll do that later. I'm just worried about the width of my fabric for now. So now those two pieces are the same width, and just so I don't accidentally unravel these, I'm going to take these threads here on the end that I used to gather, and I'm going to tie those in a knot so they can't slide around anymore. Okay, so once I have that done, I'm going to do the exact same process on the other side. I'm going to gather all of this extra length to meet the width of the bodice, and I'm doing it on the front piece right now, and then I'll take all those same steps on the back piece. Okay, everything's gathered now and the widths match, so I'm going to put clips on the end to keep my ends together, and then I'm going to evenly distribute this gather so it looks nice across the whole width, so we don't have any spots like, I don't want anything like that where this is really gathered and that's really straight right there. So I'm going to just kind of slide my fabric around on these basting stitches just really carefully to kind of spread out so we get a better distribution of our gathering there. Okay, once you have some gathering distribution that you're pleased with, I found it easiest for me is I always baste my gather to my bodice first. If I have any weird wrinkles or uneven distribution or folds in there, it's super easy to take out a basting stitch. Once I move to my serger, it's going to be a lot more difficult to undo that. So I'm just going to baste these two together first, and then I'll open it up and make sure I like the way it looks. And if that looks good, I'll switch to my serger after that. So I can open that up and I can look at my ruffle distribution, make sure that there's no weird folds in my bodice, and I'm pretty pleased with that. I'm not worried about seeing those white basting stitches because I basted within my seam allowance. So my serger, when I serge this seam, it'll cover those up, and if not, they're going to be really easy to pull out. So now I'm going to repeat this step with my other side. I can look at this piece too, and I'm really happy with the way that one turned out also. So I'm going to move now and serge over that seam I just basted. If possible, I recommend serging with a thread that's going to match your fabric because this might show in the side seams and things. So I'm picking black so it'll blend in with this print that I have. We're doing a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So on my serger, that's going to be right here. So I'm going to line up the edge with my fabric with the edge of that. And I want to make sure it's super, super easy when you're putting a ruffle on a bodice to get your bodice to kind of like fold over like that without even realizing it. And then you're serging and cutting through that. So just take some time and go a little slow on this step to make sure your bodice is laid out totally flat. have the first part. So I went over that seam allowance, so I don't have any of the white basting thread except just a tiny bit right there that I'll take out at the end. So there's the first step, and I'm going to do this with the other side now. All right, and there we have the back all sewn together. So I'm gonna really quick while I have it apart. I'm just going to take my seam ripper and pull those white threads out because I don't need them anymore now that it's all serged together. This next step is optional, but I like doing it. I like the polished finish it gives you, and it's gonna help reinforce my seam. I've taken this seam that we just serged and I've ironed it up towards the top of my bodice. And now I'm going to top stitch. I'm going to use my cover stitch, but you can use a zigzag stitch or a double needle or a stretch stitch. And I'm going to top stitch that seam to the top of my bodice. Okay, we've got that top stitching done on the front and the back now, and this is the most time-consuming part of the entire sew. Everything from here on out is going to go really fast. So we're going to work on our sleeves next. So I'm going to go back to my serger, and I have mirror images of my sleeve cut out because the front and the side that attaches to the back has this little notch on it, so they're a different shape. And I am putting the ruffle on my sleeve, so if you're not doing the ruffle, then you can skip this step. But I'm just with right sides together going to pin the bottom of my sleeve and the top side of my ruffle together. You shouldn't need any gathering. It's gonna go on similar to like how a circle skirt would go on, that we're not gonna need to gather because once we pin them together, they'll be the same length, but then it'll kind of flare out because we've got the extra width and length on the bottom of that ruffle. Okay, that's all clipped together with my right sides together. So now I'm just gonna serge along that open end. I'm gonna do that on the left and the right sleeve. Okay, we've got that cute little flare now sewn on the bottom of both of our sleeves. The next step is to attach the sleeves to the bodice. So I'm going to start with the front. So that's the side that does not have the notches on the arm scythe. And I'm going to line this arm seam right there with the sleeve that does not have the notch on it because we're working on the front, and I want right sides together again. So this one I'm going to leave face up, and I'm going to have the sleeve upside down on top of it, and I'm going to pin those together like that. So I'm going to do both of the sleeves onto the front side of the shirt, so the side without notches on that arm side. Okay, now we have sleeves on the front of the shirt. And I'm going to do that exact same thing to get the sleeves onto the back of the shirt now. You want to make sure that you're lining up your notches on your bodice and your sleeve when you're pinning them together. There we have it. We've got sleeves on the front and the back sewn together. So the next step is to sew up the sides. I'm going to go from the bottom of the sleeve all the way down to the bottom of the dress. When you're doing this, if you did the blind hem like I did, make sure that that hem is unrolled because we don't want to sew it over, fold it over like that. So I'm going to pin together with right sides together once again this shirt from the end of the sleeve, and I'll make sure I'm matching up all of my seams, like on the hem, on the armpit, where the bodice meets the skirt. I'm going to match up all of those seams while I'm pinning it together all the way down. That's all clipped together with my right sides together, all of my side seam, and so now I'm just going to serge along those edges. Okay, I've sewed up the sides. Now this is ready to be turned right side out. And look at that. We are almost done. We just need to add a neckband and hem all of our pieces now. For our neckband, we're going to take our neckband pattern piece that we've cut out, and we're going to put right sides together and sew together the short end. So we're going to make a big loop out of this neckband. And then once I have that sewn right there, I'm going to fold it in half this way so my wrong sides are together so you can see the print on either side, and I'm going to iron it flat like that. Okay, we're going to attach our neckband now. So here's my neck opening on my shirt, and here's my neckband that I've sewn in a circle and then ironed in half. And if you have a non-directional print, this doesn't matter, but I want my rainbows to be right side up. So when I'm pinning this to my shirt, I want the rainbows to be touching my shirt upside down. So my right side together, when I pin them together like this, my rainbows I can see are gonna be right side up, and my rainbows that are touching my shirt are gonna be upside down, because when I fold this up, when we're done, those are not going to be right side up. So I transferred marks from the pattern to my neckband. So I'm going to have this seam be the center back of my shirt, and then those marks are going to go on my shoulders. I also marked the center front, so that is going to be on the center front of my shirt. To determine what is front and what is back, I'm going to put my fingers halfway through the sleeves, pretty much fold the sleeves in half, and whatever has the lower neckline is the front. So that's my back. So my seam on my neckband is gonna go right there. And I'm going to put the neckband together. Sorry, I dropped it. Put the neckband together with, let's see, this way. And I'm going to line the raw edge of my neckband together with the raw edge of my shirt, like this, and pin it together all the way around that neck opening. Okay, so I have my neckband pinned on, and my neckband, as you can see, is smaller than my shirt, so I'm gonna have to stretch when I'm sewing it together to get those to line up. I wanna stretch just enough that my shirt is straight. I don't wanna overstretch. I don't wanna stretch my shirt because that'll give us a wavy seam. So I'm stretching my neckband just enough that that shirt can lay straight. And we're gonna use a we're gonna use a 1/4 inch seam allowance on this. So we've been using a 1/2 inch, but we're gonna do just a 1/4 inch. So if you're using a serger, at least on mine, I'm not actually gonna be trimming anything off. Now that I have this all clipped together, I'm gonna sew around, and since I'm serging on a circle, I'm going to serge all the way around over my tail a little bit, like maybe 1.5 inches. And then I'm gonna weave my tail in just as extra precaution since you can't backstitch on a serger. That's gonna add some extra bulk when you serge over yourself, so I don't like to do it right over where that back seam is. That's already gonna be kind of bulky from where we serge that neckband together. So I like to start just a little bit before or after. Okay, I've sewn my neckband on, and you can see where I've serged over my initial seam, and I left myself a long tail. I'm gonna take this darning needle that's not sharp, and I'm gonna just put my serged thread through the end of this. And then I'm going to just weave this into that seam that I just serged. Let's see if I can do that. I'm just gonna put it through like that. And that's just going to be like an extra precaution so that this is gonna have a harder time unraveling, but we're also gonna go over it, we're gonna top stitch on top of it, so it's gonna work out. Okay, so now I'm gonna fold my neckband up, and I'm gonna press that flat. I'm gonna press this seam down towards the bodice of my shirt, and then we're gonna top stitch along this edge. We're also, if you didn't blind hem, then you're gonna wanna fold over your hem and do that now. The short sleeve gets a 1/2 inch hem, or no, 3/4 inch hem. If you put the ruffle on it, that gets a 1/2 inch hem. So you're gonna fold that over and iron it to make that crease in it before we hem it, and then also for the bottom. So I already have that crease in there from ironing it as my very first step. So I'm gonna go ahead and just top stitch around my neckband, around my sleeves, and around the bottom of my shirt, and then we are all done. Okay, I just finished ironing, so now it's time for top stitching. Before, when we were top stitching, we went straight across this piece, and then we sewed again over the side, so that kind of locked that top stitching in. But since we're going on around, we don't want our top stitching to come out, and you can't back stitch on a cover stitch machine. So if you're using a regular sewing machine, you're gonna use a zigzag stitch or a stretch stitch here. I'm gonna use my cover stitch, and I'm going to sew all the way around my loop, and then I'm gonna sew over where I started, about 1.5 inches again, to kind of lock in those first stitches, and then I'll show you my trick for pulling all my threads to the bottom to tie them together in a knot once I get to that point. Okay, I've now gone all the way around my neckband, and I've sewn over about 1.5 inches where I started. I'm going to twist my knob to make sure that both of my needles are up out of my fabric. I've released the pressure on my foot, and I'm gonna release the tension on my 2 top needles right here by pushing this to the side. It might look a little different on your machine. And then I'm gonna pull my garment straight away from me. So I'm gonna go straight back and just give myself space to work. So now you can see I've got all of these threads coming out, but just 2 from the top. So keeping those separate, I'm gonna snip just my 2 top threads and then make sure they're not tangled up in each other. I'm gonna pull the threads from the bottom and pull them through. So we're essentially just undoing the last stitch we did, but now those top threads are all on the bottom edge of our shirt. And now we can cut through, there should just be 3 coming in. We're gonna cut through those, and then I'm gonna tie these into a square knot to just like seal in that top stitching that I just did. And then these threads are left over from where I started, but I've sewn over that, so that's kind of locked it in, so I can trim those down now. And then I'm gonna do the same exact thing around my sleeve hems and around the bottom of my shirt. It's really important that you're not stretching your shirt as you're doing this step because you don't want wavy hems. And here you go, there's our completed baby doll raglan. If you haven't been trimming along the way, you can go back and trim all of these threads now that they've all been tied off or sewn over, and you've got a completed garment. Congratulations!